Thank you, thank you. The following is one of my voiceover demos. If you're a voiceover artist and you would like to advertise one of your demos on my podcast, please send an MP3 to thedrill12, all one word, at gmail.com. That's thedrill12 at gmail.com. Back in a minute.
Americans love scenery. We want to see it all, from one coast to the next, Mount Rushmore down to the Everglades. So hop into a Chevy Malibu and take the scenic route. It's the car you knew America could build. There's a place where people count on friendships they can trace back generations, where they can count on the same stool at the coffee shop waiting for them every morning. This place is called Glen Ellen, and you can find it in every bottle of Glen Ellen wine. This is craft brewed Herman Joseph's, the smoothest, easiest drinking specialty beer in the entire solar system. And I believe you'll find drinkable in the dictionary right after don't order a beer you can't drink. Zoingo! Boingo! The freestyle pogo with more boing, more bounce. Bounce further, bounce higher with Zoingo Boingo. To see what makes Arrowhead Mountain Spring water different from those other waters, you have to go back to the source. And with Arrowhead, that means going back a little farther and longer than most. Between security challenged and security strengthened, there's one important word: how. And it is the how that makes all the difference to our nation and our world. Lockheed Martin. We never forget who we're working for. What makes Kraft Singles so good? 2 out of every 3 kids don't get the recommended amount of calcium. But with Kraft Singles, they get a good source of calcium and the taste they love. Kraft Singles. Magic every single time. Throw boring overboard with a new real meal from Long John Silver's. A meal worthy of a plate, just $4.99. Only at Long John Silver's. We may not all be geniuses, but we can all do something smart. Introducing the Hyundai 199 Sonata Lease. It's a smart deal on a really smart car.
She was really into the idea of the next president being a woman, and I agree with that, because I just think we need to pay the presidents less.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, Trump Tuesday, July the 23rd, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the patriotic shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, the 33 strategies of war, and Donald Trump. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
So dear, and fell upon no vinegar hill like an Irish volunteer. Then raise the harp of Barron, boys, the flag we all revere. We'll fight them all beneath its fold like Irish volunteers. Then raise the harp of Barron, boys, the flag we all revere. We'll fight them all beneath its fold like Irish volunteers. When I was driven from me home by an oppressor's hand, I quit me sticks and greased me brogues, came over to this land. I found a home and many a friend and some that I love dear. I stick to them like bricks and glues, the Irish volunteer. Then raise the harp of Barron, boys, the flag we all revere. We'll fight them fall beneath its fold like Irish volunteers. Then raise the harp of Barron, boys, the flag we all revere. like Irish volunteers. Of the South commenced their warlike raid. I quickly laid down me heart to the devil when we spade, and to the recruiting office I went that happened to be near, and joined the good old 69th like an Irish volunteer. Then fill our ranks and march away, no traitors do we fear. We'll drive them all to blazes, says the Irish volunteer. Then fill the ranks and march away, no traitors do we fear. We'll drive them all to blazes, says the Irish volunteer. When the Prince of Wales came o'er, he made a hullabaloo. Oh, everybody was turned out in gold and tinsel too. But then the good old 69, they didn't like lords or peers. They wouldn't give a damn for kings, the Irish volunteers. We love the land of liberty, its laws we will revere. But the devil take nobility, says the Irish volunteer. We love the land of liberty, its laws we will revere. But the devil take nobility, says the Irish volunteer. South should ever cross our roads, we'll drive them out the blazes as St. Patrick did the toads. We'll give them all charduces that come just below the ears, made strong and good from Irish help by Irish volunteers. Then here's the brave McClellan, whom the army now reveres. He lead us on to victory, say the Irish volunteers. Then here's the brave McClellan, whom the army now reveres. He lead us on to victory, say the Irish volunteers. Now fill your glasses up, me boys, and toast come drink with me. May Erin's harp and starry flag united ever be. May traitors quake and rebel shake and tremble in their fears, when next they meet the Yankee boys, the Irish volunteers. God bless the name of Washington, that nameless land reveres. Success to Mara, Nugent and the Irish volunteers. God bless the name of Washington, that nameless land reveres. Success to Mara, Nugent and the Irish volunteers.
Thank you. And now the tourist with the headlines.
Good morning, Maria, and good morning, everyone. Kamala Harris has enough delegates for the nomination. It's over. She's in. The Democrats wanted to avoid an ugly fight. They want to unify around a single candidate. Kamala Harris has been coronated. The honeymoon has begun. The money's flooding in, $81 million in the last 24 hours. And in her first public speech after Biden stepped aside, Harris attacked Trump personally. She said she had prosecuted Trump's type, like predators who abuse women. The crowd loved it. The president called into Harris at campaign headquarters. His voice was weak and raspy. His doctor says he's recovering from COVID. Now, he returns to the White House this afternoon. We may get to see him after he's been out of sight for nearly a week. To the markets, this is not a Kamala Harris rally. Minor league sell-off. The Dow off 6, S&P down 1, NASDAQ down 28. Not much price change there. Bitcoin holding around 66,500. Interest rates start with the 10-year below 4.25, 4.23. The 2-year right around 4.5, 4.51. Gold just above $2,400 an ounce, 24.53 to be precise. Oil coming down, $77 a barrel. No change for gas at an average of $3.50 for regular. Diesel is up 1 cent, $3.83. Politics. Kamala Harris will not preside over Netanyahu's address to Congress tomorrow. That is a slam. The top of the Democrats' presidential ticket will not hear the speech of America's principal ally in the Mideast. The pro-Hamas wing of the Democrat Party will also boycott the address. On the show today, Tesla and Google issue their financial reports. It's the start of the big tech reporting season, and some of our guests are predicting spectacular results. We'll see. Karine Jean-Pierre appears on The View today instead of holding a regular press conference briefing. She wants to avoid that because she would be asked about her cover-up of Biden's true condition. Trump plays a round of golf with live golfer Bryson DeChambeau. It's a YouTube special. That's another link between the former president and the Saudi-supported live. Lots of money going to charity and a chance for Trump to show his usual vigor. Tuesday, July 23rd, 2024, Varney and Company is about to begin.
Thank you. And now, my take.
And now this. The Democrats are euphoric. For a week, they've been down in the dumps. The assassination cast Donald Trump into the role of fighting patriot. Rumblings about the president's mental and physical abilities were growing louder until dramatically, on Sunday afternoon, he quit the race. That left Biden's re-election campaign leaderless. The Democrats were in complete disarray. Then, miraculously, the Democrats settled on a single replacement candidate, Kamala Harris. Suddenly, the money was flooding in. Old doubts were suppressed. There are no challengers. Who wants to deny a black woman a crack at the presidency? This coronation brings a few problems. The installation of Kamala Harris is just an old-fashioned backroom deal to put a San Francisco liberal in the White House. It may not go down well with voters, I should say. Democrats didn't get an open discussion to find the best candidate. Harris has been coronated without a contest. And they may not all agree with Harris's radical ideas. You know, there are some centrists left in the party. Do they really want to go forward with a Green New Deal, huge tax increases, electric vehicle mandates, and massive unsustainable debt? They want that? In her first public speech since Biden stepped aside, she attacked Donald Trump in a personal way. Is that the way to go? As a prosecutor in California, she said she had gone after, quote, predators who had abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, and cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain, end quote. She says she knows Trump's type. It sounded a lot like a sneer. Basing a candidacy on Trump hatred is politically dangerous. You'd better be standing on the high ground of a successful track record. Trump does. Kamala Harris does not. Honeymoons don't last long. Secondara Varney just warming up, actually.
And that was the my take. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, the military shorts.
This is the jet that almost replaced the F-22 Raptor. Let me explain. This is the YF-23, a top contender in the U.S. Air Force's advanced tactical fighter competition against the Lockheed YF-22, which you now know as the F-22 Raptor. But what made the YF-23 so different? Its futuristic diamond wing design helped to reduce drag between Mach 0.75 and Mach 1.2, making it superior in low-speed situations, a key advantage over its biggest rival, the F-22, and its sleek, flatter form, along with its single set of stabilizers and engine nozzles fitted with blading tiles, made it much stealthier. These drastically reduced its infrared signature to enemy air defenses. Even though this aircraft was great at stealth and had advanced technology unlike its competition, it traded some agility for these features. There are still questions today about whether the YF-23 would have been a better option, and if it could beat the F-22 Raptor.
What happened when an HOA tried to stop a World War II vet from flying the flag? U.S. Army Colonel Van T. Barfoot, a legendary combat veteran of World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, with 35 years of service and a trove of medals including the Medal of Honor, Silver Star, Bronze Star, 2 Army Air Medals, the Legion of Merit, and 3 Purple Hearts, decided to hang up his rifle and move to Richmond, Virginia for some well-deserved peace and quiet. Unfortunately, the tribunal of Karens running the Sussex Square HOA seemed determined to rain on his parade. Colonel Barfoot proudly installed a flagpole in his front yard, raising the colors each morning and respectfully retiring them every evening. One day, he found a letter from an attorney forbidding him from flying the American flag. Despite a lifetime of excluding countless Nazis and communists from existence, he now faced a new battle in Virginia. His son-in-law alerted a local radio show, and the story quickly went national, rallying the White House, Fox News, and the VFW against the HOA. Within a week, the HOA backed down. Virginia state law was amended to prevent such restrictions, and the law firm had to rebrand. Barfoot continued flying the flag daily until his death at 92.
As a fighting unit, you drop their commander and they become totally disorganized. They wasn't like us. We had a company in the 4th Marine Division. There was a private leading the company because the officers had been shot. But the Japanese were like that. If you drop their leader, they become totally disorganized, and they were not a very effective fighting unit once that happened. So that was a major factor of the people that were on the surface fighting. They just go to pieces when they don't have a leader. It was a big deal for that operation.
How many Navy SEALs have been attacked by sharks? During Bud's third phase, the candidates are sent to San Clemente Island, aka the Rock, breeding ground of great white sharks. The northern end of the island is used to train Navy pilots. The northeastern tip is reserved for Navy SEALs. As soon as the candidates arrives at the compound, they get a tour of the facility and their first evening meal. After the meal, the instructors welcomes them with the most horrific shark attack videos they could find. At the end of the feature, the students are instructed to gear up for a night conditioning swim in the cove. Although the instructors reassure the men that no student has ever been taken by a shark during buds, in case of encounter, their advice is to stand your ground, and if the shark gets too close, to hit him in the eyes or snout as hard as they possibly can. This, of course, assuming you can see him coming in the pitch black dark.
Why did the U.S. military dump their tanks in the sea? Let me explain. Most people think dumping tanks in the ocean is just a way to get rid of them, but there's more important reasons. During World War II, the U.S. had major military operations in the South Pacific, especially in small countries like Vanuatu. In Vanuatu, the U.S. built 2 important bases. The main one, called Buttons, was on the island of Espiritu Santo. This base was crucial for launching attacks against Japanese forces. After the war, the U.S. tried to sell off the equipment at these bases. When no buyers were found, they had to find another solution. Dismantling tanks for recycling would have been too expensive. Throwing them whole into a steel furnace wouldn't work because of all the different materials inside. So the U.S. decided to dump them in the ocean instead. But something unexpected happened after this. Dumping these tanks created artificial reefs, which are great for marine life. These underwater areas have even become popular dive sites, attracting tourists to the tropical waters of Vanuatu.
And that was the military shorts. Back in a minute. And now a little bit of motivation.
It's going to feel better when it's over. You know that when you get done doing the hard thing, you know you will feel better when it is done. You also know that if you don't do the hard thing, the thing that you don't want to do, that you don't feel like doing, you know if you don't do it, you're going to feel inferior. You know you're going to feel weak. Those are the 2 outcomes. One will cause you some short-term gratification. You'll get to sleep a little bit more. You won't have to put out during a workout. You don't have to do this tedious task. You'll get some short-term gratification, but the long-term regret will be strong, and it will inflict pain on you. The other outcome is when you do what you're supposed to do. You do what you know you need to do to move forward. And when you do that thing, you know you're going to feel strong, and you're going to feel gratified, and you're going to feel worthy of this life.
Easy choices, hard life. Hard choices, easy life.
And most of you in this room, you can't give up 6 months. You can't give up 8 months. You can't let stuff go for a few weeks. Some of you can't just let girls go. Let it go. Some of you just can't let parties go. Let it go. If you want to dominate in the area, you got to let everything go with that thing you're pursuing. You can't chase 2 rabbits and catch both of them.
The shortcut is a lie. The hack doesn't get you there. And if you want to take the easy road, it won't take you to where you want to be. There is no easy way. There is only hard work, late nights, early mornings, practice, rehearsal, repetition, study, sweat, blood, toil, frustration, and discipline. There is only one way. Get up and go.
You need to be the master of your emotions, not let them affect you.
Get control of your feelings. By getting control of your feelings, you gain control of your life. When you do this over and over and over again, you change your brain. You become tougher. You become the one who decides what gets done and the level of success you achieve. Discipline is something you dictate. Motivation won't make you exercise every day. Discipline will. Motivation won't stay up late and finish a project for you. Discipline will. Motivation isn't going to get you out of bed in the morning. Discipline will. Remember that the pain right now will absolutely pay off in the future.
Some of you are not successful because you think effort is success. You think because you put in 40 hours that you're supposed to get some because you put in 40. It don't work like that in the school of hard knocks. They don't care how many hours you put. They just want to see the execution. So you feeling in your spirit like, yo, but I did just as much as he did. I studied just as much as he studied. It doesn't matter. You just got to execute.
You gotta get a little bit more intense about your life. You gotta stop being so casual. It's decisions we make that chase that best version of us every second, every day, because every day alters the direction of the course of our lives.
We are losing control. And it's time to take control. You've held up your someday. And here's the crazy part. All you gotta do is look in the mirror. All you gotta do is deal with yourself, and then we're gonna get you a whole other level. And at some point, you gotta tell the flesh who's in control. I'm in control. You're not in control. I know you don't want to wake up. You don't have an option. Get up. There's a certain lifestyle we want. You need to discipline yourself. You need to learn to tell you no. You need to learn to tell you stop. You need to learn to tell you quit. Every single day, if you do what you say you're going to do, you're going to get what you dream to get. Some days you wake up, you in the mood. Some days you're not in the mood. A calendar does not care if it's your birthday, if it's a holiday, if you're not feeling good. A calendar does not care. A schedule does not care. So what happens is when you're consistent and you do something every day, you do it over and over and over again, it becomes a habit. More stuff comes to you when you execute, son. Execution, baby. We will do it by listing our priorities. We will do it by shutting everything else out. We will do it by saying no to everything that does not apply to our priority. We will do it by getting focused, laser focused. This will be the year that you stop half doing stuff. You stop half doing sports, half doing school, half writing that book. This will be the year of execution. And we'll do it one day at a time. And you're going to get control. And when you get control of that one area, you're going to blow up in every area. And then someday going to be your day. If you work for it, if you're willing to put in that sweat, that blood, and those tears, I'm telling you, you can have what you want, be what you want, do what you want. And there ain't nothing you can't have if you're willing to work for it. If you're willing to stick in there, if you're willing to stay, if you're willing to fight, it ain't nothing you can't have.
Discipline your body, free your mind, get up early and go. Get after it, and you will become the person you want to be.
Rewards come after you work, not before. The only place where success comes before work is in a dictionary.
And that was the little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the Daily Stoic.
The Day in Review. I will keep constant watch over myself, and most usefully will put each day up for review. For this is what makes us evil, that none of us looks back upon our own lives. We reflect upon only that which we are about to do. And yet our plans for the future descend from the past. Seneca, Moral Letters, 83.2. In a letter to his older brother Novatus, Seneca describes a beneficial exercise he borrowed from another prominent philosopher. At the end of each day, he would ask himself variations of the following questions. What bad habit did I curb today? How am I better? Were my actions just? How can I improve? At the beginning or end of each day, the Stoic sits down with his journal and reviews what he did, what he thought, what could be improved. It's for this reason that Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is a somewhat inscrutable book. It was for personal clarity and not public benefit. Writing down Stoic exercises was and is also a form of practicing them, just as repeating a prayer or hymn might be. Keep your own journal, whether it's saved on a computer or in a little notebook. Take time to consciously recall the events of the previous day. Be unflinching in your assessments. Notice what contributed to your happiness and what detracted from it. Write down what you'd like to work on or quotes that you like. By making the effort to record such thoughts, you're less likely to forget them. An added bonus, you'll have a running tally to track your progress, too.
And that was the Daily Stoic. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Bishop Robert Barron.
Our job in the wider society is to be a leaven and a light and a direction. Modernity wants to make religion into a private matter. So it's like a hobby. It's like something I cultivate in my privacy. But that's not biblical at all. In the Bible, the purpose of being a Christian is to be a light for others, is to be leaven for others, is to be salt, which preserves what's worth preserving, salt that puts to death what should be put to death. That our lives are other-directed. We have a function precisely in the society. The irony is that we tend to think of religion as, well, that's not about politics and economics and society. It's about what you do in your privacy. No. We're a city on a hill. You don't hide the city on the hill. You make it more visible, right? So that's the role of Christians, is to be a sign of contradiction, a sign of direction. We exist precisely for the wider society.
And that was Bishop Robert Barron. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Quote, "The fundamental principle of capitalism is the separation of state and economics. That is, the liberation of men's economic activities of production and trade from any form of intervention, coercion, compulsion, regulation, or control by the government. This is the essence of capitalism, which is implicit in its theory and in the operation of a free market," unquote. And that was from Ayn Rand's book, The Voice of Reason, and the chapter is The Intellectual Bankruptcy of Our Age. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the 33 strategies of war.
The historical figure who most deeply pondered the nature of communication was surely Socrates, the great philosopher of classical Athens. Socrates' goal was simple. He wanted to make people realize that their knowledge of the world was superficial, if not downright false. Had he tried to say this conventionally and directly, though, he would only have made his audience more resistant and would have strengthened their intellectual smugness. And so, pondering this phenomenon, and through much trial and error, Socrates came up with a method. First came the setup. He would make a show of his own ignorance, telling his audience of mostly young men that he himself knew little, that any wisdom he was reputed to have was just talk. Meanwhile, he would compliment his listeners, feeding their vanity by praising their ideas in an offhand way. Then, in a series of questions constituting a dialogue with a member of his audience, he would slowly tear apart the very ideas he had just praised. He would never directly say anything negative, but through his questions, he would make the other person see the incompleteness or falsity of his ideas. This was confusing. He had just professed his own ignorance, and he had sincerely praised his interlocutors. Yet he had somehow raised a lot of doubts about what they had claimed to know. The dialogue would lie in the minds of Socrates' targets for several days, leading them to question their ideas about the world on their own. In this frame of mind, they would now be more open to real knowledge, to something new. Socrates broke down people's preconceptions about the world by adopting what he called a midwife role. He did not implant his ideas, he simply helped to deliver the doubts that are latent in everyone. The success of the Socratic method was staggering. A whole generation of young Athenians fell under his spell and were permanently altered by his teachings. The most famous of these was Plato, who spread Socrates' ideas as if they were gospel. And Plato's influence over Western thought is perhaps greater than that of anyone else. Socrates' method was highly strategic. He began by tearing himself down and building others up, a way of diffusing his listeners' natural defensiveness, imperceptibly lowering their walls. Then he would lure them into a labyrinth of discussion from which they could find no exit and in which everything they believed was questioned. According to Alcibiades, one of the young men whom Socrates had bewitched, you never knew what he really believed or what he really meant. Everything he said was a rhetorical stance, was ironic. And since you were unsure what he was doing, what came to the surface in these conversations were your own confusion and doubt. He altered your experience of the world from within.
And that was the 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene. Back in a minute. Thank you. So if you're a Democrat, you should vote Republican because there are things that don't disappear. Violence is one of them. Modernity is not distinguished by an aversion to violence. Violence is simply protean. It varies its outward form according to the social constellation at hand. Today, it is shifting from the visible to the invisible, from the frontal to the viral, from brute force to mediated force, from the real to the virtual, from the physical to the psychological, from the negative to the positive, withdrawing into the subcutaneous, subcommunicative, capillary, and neuronal space, creating the false impression that it has disappeared. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Chapter 3 of Don't Think of an Elephant, Know Your Values and Frame the Debate by Dr. Lakoff.
Luntz once wrote a memo for talking to women. How do you talk to women? According to Luntz, women like certain words, so when you are talking to an audience of women, here are the words you use as many times as possible. Love, from the heart, and for the children. And if you read George W. Bush's speeches from that period, love, from the heart, and for the children show up over and over again. This kind of language use is a science. Like any science, it can be used honestly or harmfully. This kind of language use is taught. This kind of language use is also a discipline. Conservatives enforce message discipline. In many offices, there is a pizza fund. Every time you use the wrong language, you have to put a quarter in the pizza fund. People quickly learn to say tax relief or partial birth abortion, not something else. But Luntz is about much more than language. He recognizes that the right use of language starts with ideas, with the right framing of the issues, a framing that reflects a consistent conservative moral perspective, what we have called strict father morality. Luntz's writing is not just about language. For each issue, he explains what the conservative reasoning is, what the progressive reasoning is, and how the progressive arguments can best be attacked from a conservative perspective. He is clear. Ideas come first. One of the major mistakes liberals make is that they think they have all the ideas they need. They think that all they lack is media access, or maybe some magic bullet phrases, the liberal equivalent of partial birth abortion. When you think you just lack words, what you really lack are ideas.
Ideas come in the form of frames. When the frames are there, the words come readily. There's a way you can tell when you lack the right frames. There's a phenomenon you have probably noticed. A conservative on TV uses two words like tax relief, and the progressive has to go into a paragraph-long discussion of his own view. The conservative can appeal to an established frame, that taxation is an affliction or burden, which allows for the two-word phrase tax relief. But there is no established frame on the other side. You can talk about it, but it takes some doing because there is no established frame, no fixed idea already out there. In cognitive science, there is a name for this phenomenon. It's called hypocognition. The lack of the ideas you need, the lack of a relatively simple fixed frame that can be evoked by a word or two. The idea of hypocognition comes from a study in Tahiti in the 1950s by the late anthropologist Bob Levy, who was also a therapist. Levy addressed the question of why there were so many suicides in Tahiti and discovered that Tahitians did not have a concept of grief. They felt grief, they experienced it, but they did not have a concept for it or a name for it. They did not see it as a normal emotion. There were no rituals around grief, no grief counseling, nothing like it. They lacked a concept they needed, and wound up committing suicide all too often. Progressives are suffering from massive hypocognition. The conservatives used to suffer from it. When Goldwater lost in 1964, they had very few of the concepts that they have today. In the intermediate 50 years, conservative thinkers have filled in their conceptual gaps. But our conceptual gaps are still there. Let's go back to tax relief. What is taxation? Taxation is what you pay to live in a civilized country, what you pay to have democracy and opportunity, and what you pay to use the infrastructure paid for by previous taxpayers. The highway system, the internet, the entire scientific establishment, the medical establishment, the communications system, the airline system, all are or were paid for by taxpayers. You can think of taxation metaphorically in at least two ways. First, as an investment. Imagine the following ad. Our parents invested in the future, ours as well as theirs, through their taxes. They invested their tax money in the interstate highway system, the internet, the scientific and medical establishments, our communications system, our airline system, the space program. They invested in the future, and we are reaping the tax benefits, the benefits from the taxes they paid. Today, we have assets, highways, schools and colleges, the internet, airlines, that come from the wise investments they made. Imagine versions of this ad running over and over for years. Eventually, the frame would be established. Taxes are wise investments in the future. Or take another metaphor. Taxation is paying your dues, paying your membership fee in America. If you join a country club or a community center, you pay fees. Why? You did not build the swimming pool. You have to maintain it. You did not build the basketball court. Someone has to clean it. You may not use the squash court, but you still have to pay your dues. Otherwise, it won't be maintained and will fall apart. People who avoid taxes, like corporations that move to Bermuda, are not paying their dues to the country. It is patriotic to be a taxpayer. It is traitorous to desert our country and not pay your dues. Perhaps Bill Gates Sr. said it best. In arguing to keep the inheritance tax, he pointed out that he and Bill Jr. did not invent the internet. They just used it to make billions. There is no such thing as a self-made man. Every businessman has used the vast American infrastructure which the taxpayers paid for to make his money. He did not make his money alone. He used taxpayer infrastructure. He got rich on what other taxpayers had paid for. The banking system, the Federal Reserve, the Treasury and Commerce Departments, and the judicial system, where 9/10 of cases involve corporate law. These taxpayer investments support companies and wealthy investors. There are no self-made men. The wealthy have gotten rich using what previous taxpayers have paid for. They owe the taxpayers of this country a great deal and should be paying it back. These are accurate views of taxes, but they are not yet enshrined in our brains. They need to be repeated over and over again and refined until they take their rightful place in our synapses. But that takes time. It does not happen overnight. Start now. It is not an accident that conservatives are winning where they have successfully framed the issues.
So I wanted to interject real quick here and say that he's wrong about the self-made man. This is the same argument that you're going to hear from the left constantly, the hard left, like Obama did the same thing. He didn't make that. Yeah, they did, because the individual is the one that takes the risk. Whether or not they are getting their shipments coming in on a road that was paved using government money. By the way, the government doesn't pave the roads anyways. They hire contractors to do it. But the point is, it is the individual that takes the risk. The individual has to go to the bank and get the loans to start the business. It is the individual that has to run the business, and there is no guarantee, not from the government or anyone else, that the business will prosper. So the key word here that they omit deliberately is the word risk. And now back to the book.
They've got a 40 to 50 year head start, and more than $2 billion in think tank investments. And they are still thinking ahead. Progressives are not. Progressives feel so assaulted by conservatives that they can only think about immediate defense. Democratic office holders are constantly under attack. Every day they have to respond to conservative initiatives. It is always, what do we have to do to fight them off today? This leads to politics that are reactive, not proactive. And it is not just public officials. I have been talking to advocacy groups around the country, working with them and trying to help them with framing issues. I have worked with more than 400 advocacy groups in this way. They have the same problems. They are under attack all the time, and they are trying to defend themselves against the next attack. Realistically, they do not have time to plan. They do not have time to think long term. They do not have time to think beyond their particular issues. They are all good people, intelligent, committed people, but they are constantly on the defensive. Why? It is not hard to explain it when we think about funding. The right-wing think tanks get large block grants and endowments, millions at a time. They are very well funded. Furthermore, they know that they are going to get the money the next year and the year after that. Remember, these are block grants, no strings attached. Do what you need, hire intellectuals, bring talent along. These institutions also build human capital for the future. Progressive foundations spread the money around, thinly. They give $25,000 here, maybe $50,000, maybe even $100,000. Sometimes it is a big grant, but the recipients have to do something different from what everybody else is doing because the foundations see duplication as a waste of money. Not only that, but also they are not block grants like conservative foundations get. The recipients do not have full freedom to decide how to spend the money. And it is certainly not appropriate to use it for career development or infrastructure building or hiring intellectuals to think about long-term as well as short-term or interrelated policies. The emphasis is on providing direct services to the people who need the services. Grassroots funding, not infrastructure creation. This is, for the most part, how progressive foundations work. And because of that, the organizations they fund have to have a very narrow focus. They have to have projects, not just areas they work on. Activists and advocates are overworked and underpaid, and they do not have time or energy to think about how they should be linking up with other people. They mainly do not have the time or training to think about framing their issues. The system forces a narrow focus, and with it, isolation. You ask, why is it like this? There is a reason. There is a deep reason, and it is a reason you should think about. In the right's hierarchy of moral values, the top value is preserving and defending the moral system itself. If that is your main goal, what do? You build infrastructure. You buy up media in advance. You plan ahead. You do things like give fellowships to right-wing law students to get them through law school if they join the Federalist Society. And you get them nice jobs after that. If you want to extend your worldview, it is very smart to make sure that over the long haul you have the people and the resources that you need. On the left, the highest value is helping individuals who need help. So if you are a foundation or you are setting up a foundation, what makes you a good person? You help as many people as you can. And the more public budgets get cut, the more people there are who need help. So you spread the money around to the grassroots organizations, and therefore you do not have any money left for infrastructure or talent development, and certainly not for intellectuals. Do not waste a penny in duplicating efforts, because you have to help more and more people. How do you show that you are a good moral person or foundation? By listing all the people you help. The more, the better. And so you perpetuate a system that helps the right. In the process, it also does help people. Certainly, it is not that people do not need help. They do. But what has happened as budgets and taxes get cut is that the right is privatizing the left. The right is forcing the left to spend ever more private money on what the government should be supporting. There are many things that we can do about all this. Let's talk about where to start. The right knows how to talk about values. We need to talk about values. If we think about it a little, we can list our values. But it is not easy to think about how the values fit the issues. To know how to talk about every issue from the perspective of our values, not theirs. Progressives also have to look at the integration of issues. This is something that the right is very, very savvy about. They know about what I call strategic initiatives. A strategic initiative is a plan in which a change in one carefully chosen issue area has automatic effects over many, many, many other issue areas. For example, tax cuts. This seems straightforward, but as a result of tax cuts, there's not enough money in the budget for any of the government's social programs. Not just not enough money for, say, homelessness or schools or environmental protection. Instead, not enough money for everything at once, the whole range. This is a strategic initiative. Or tort reform, which means putting limits on awards in lawsuits. Tort reform is a top priority for conservatives. Why do conservatives care so much about this? Well, as soon as you see the effects, you can see why they care. Because in one stroke you prohibit all of the potential lawsuits that will be the basis of future environmental legislation and regulation. That is, it is not just regulation of the chemical industry or the coal industry or the nuclear power industry or other things that are at stake. It is the regulation of everything. If parties who are harmed cannot sue immoral or negligent corporations or professionals for significant sums, the companies are free to harm the public in unlimited ways in the course of making money. And lawyers who take risks and make significant investments in such cases will no longer make enough money to support the risk.
So another quick comment, he says that tax cuts, well then all these programs, they don't have enough money. But if that's the case, then how come the government keeps getting bigger? Back to the book.
And corporations will be free to ignore the public good. That is what tort reform is about. In addition, if you look at where Democrats get much of their money in the individual states, it is significantly from the lawyers who win tort cases. Many tort lawyers are important Democratic donors. Tort reform, as conservatives call it, cuts off this source of money. All of a sudden, 3/4 of the money going to the Texas Democratic Party is not there. In addition, companies who poison the environment want to be able to cap possible awards. That way, they can calculate in advance the cost of paying victims and build it into the cost of doing business. Irresponsible corporations win big from tort reform. The Republican Party wins big from tort reform. And these real purposes are hidden. The issue appears to be eliminating frivolous lawsuits. People getting $30 million for having hot coffee spilled on them. However, what the conservatives are really trying to achieve is not in the proposal. What they are trying to achieve follows from enacting the proposal. They don't care primarily about the lawsuits themselves. They care about getting rid of environmental, consumer, and worker protections in general. And they care about defunding the Democratic Party. That is what a strategic initiative is. There have been a couple of strategic initiatives on the left, environmental impact reports and the Endangered Species Act, but it has been 40 years since they were enacted. Unlike the right, the left does not think strategically. We think issue by issue. We generally do not try to figure out what minimal change we can enact that will have effects across many issues. There are very few exceptions. There are also strategic initiatives of another kind, what I call slippery slope initiatives. Take the first step and you're on your way off the cliff. Conservatives are very good at slippery slope initiatives. Take partial birth abortion. There are almost no such cases. Why do conservatives care so much? Because it is a first step down a slippery slope to ending all abortion. It puts out there a frame of abortion as a horrendous procedure, when most operations ending pregnancy are nothing like this. Why an education bill about school testing? Once the testing frame applies not just to students but also to schools, then schools can metaphorically fail and be punished for failing by having their allowance cut. Less funding in turn makes it harder for the schools to improve, which leads to a cycle of failure and ultimately elimination for many public schools. What replaces the public school system is a voucher system to support private schools. The wealthy would have good schools, paid for in part by what used to be tax payments for public schools. The poor would not have the money for good schools. We would wind up with a two-tier school system, a good one for the deserving rich, and a bad one for the undeserving poor. The conservatives don't have to win on issue after issue after issue. There are many things a progressive can do about it. Here are 11. First, notice what conservatives have done right and where progressives have missed the boat. It is more than just control of the media, though that is far from trivial. What they have done right is to successfully frame the issues from their perspective. Acknowledge their successes and our failures. Second, remember, don't think of an elephant. If you keep their language and their framing and just argue against it, you lose because you are reinforcing their frame. Third, The truth alone will not set you free. Just speaking truth to power doesn't work. You need to frame the truths effectively from your perspective. Fourth, you need to speak from your moral perspective at all times. Progressive policies follow from progressive values. Get clear on your values and use the language of values. Drop the language of policy wonks. Fifth, understand where conservatives are coming from. Get their strict father morality and its consequences clear. Know what you are arguing against. Be able to explain why they believe what they believe. Try to predict what they will say. Sixth, think strategically across issue areas. Think in terms of large moral goals, not in terms of programs for their own sake. Seventh, think about the consequences of proposals. Form progressive slippery slope initiatives. Eighth, remember that voters vote their identity and their values, which need not coincide with their self-interest. Ninth, unite and cooperate. Here's how. Remember the 6 modes of progressive thought. 1, socioeconomic. 2, identity politics. 3, environmentalist. 4, civil libertarian. 5, spiritual. And 6, anti-authoritarian. Notice which of these modes of thought you use most often, where you fall on the spectrum and where the people you talk to fall on the spectrum. Then rise above your own mode of thought and start thinking and talking from shared progressive values. 10th, be proactive, not reactive. Play offense, not defense. Practice reframing every day on every issue. Don't just say what you believe. Use your frames, not their frames. Use them because they fit the values you believe in. 11th, speak to the progressive base in order to activate the nurturant model of biconceptual voters. Don't move to the right. Rightward movement hurts in 2 ways. It alienates the progressive base, and it helps conservatives by activating their model in biconceptual voters.
So that was chapter 3 of Don't Think of an Elephant, Know Your Values and Frame the Debate by George Lakoff. And he says in there flat out, he said, giving them advice, don't accept their frames. And we have to do the same thing. They have been listening to Dr. Lakoff, and they have been trying to frame the debate, and for the most part successfully. Migrants, they call the people that come flooding across the border, not illegal immigrants, but migrants. People don't migrate. Animals migrate. The difference between people and animals is property. Animals don't have property. People do. So that's one of the areas. Homeless is another frame, instead of bums or squatters and trespassers. Okay, we have to do the same thing. When you're hearing people start using the wrong frame, you need to stay away from that frame at the very least and use the correct frame. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Donald Trump.
Since the first volley of gunfire, brave Americans in every generation have answered the call of duty and won victory for freedom in its hour of need. General Douglas MacArthur once said that the soldier who is called upon to offer and to give his life for his country is the noblest development of mankind. We pay tribute to those brave souls who raced into gunfire, roared into battle, and ran into hell to face down evil. They made their sacrifice not for fame or for money or even for glory, but for country. Today, a new generation of American patriots are fighting to win the battle against terrorism, risking their lives to protect our citizens from an enemy that uses the murder of innocents to wage war on humanity itself. I believe that God has a special place in heaven for those who lay down their lives so that others may live free from fear and this horrible oppression. Now, let us pledge to make the most of that freedom that they so gallantly and brilliantly fought for. Their stories are now woven into the soul of our nation, into the stars and stripes on our flag, and into the beating hearts of our great, great people. Today we pay tribute to that legacy, a legacy you protect and grow each and every day. We dominate the sky. We dominate the sea. We dominate the land and space. Not merely because we have the best equipment, but because we have the best people. Each of you embodies the warrior creed. Your devotion, prowess, and expertise make you the most fearsome fighting force in the history of our world. Together with our allies, America's warriors are prepared to defend our nation using the full range of our unmatched capabilities. We will never yield, never waver, and never falter in defense of our people, our freedom, and our great American flag. That flag stands for the values of our republic, the history of our people, the sacrifice of our heroes, and our loyalty to the nation we love. This is the heritage of the American Armed Forces, the greatest force for peace and justice the world has ever known. As Americans celebrate Veterans Day this month, we honor all who have sacrificed to make peace and stability possible. We pay tribute to every proud American who has worn the uniform and served our country. Today, many nations are thriving because of the sacrifices made by American service members and our allies, and because of the sacrifices all of you continue to make each and every day. You are the reason the great American flag will proudly stand behind me wherever I go. And every time I look at that flag, I will think of brave men and women like you. And I will think of all of the American patriots down through the generations who poured out their blood, sweat, tears, hopes, and dreams to defend our country. You are the greatest hope for people who desire to live in freedom and harmony, and you are the greatest threat to tyrants and dictators who seek to prey on the innocent. The path of strong nations and free people, certain of their values and confident in their futures, is a proven path toward prosperity and peace. We cherish our cultures, we embrace our values, and we always fight for what we believe in. Because of you, the people of America and the freedom-loving people everywhere are able to fulfill their destinies and follow their dreams. And we are grateful for your families, for their sacrifice and support that allows our brave men and women to serve. We are eternally grateful for your service and for your sacrifice. And we are forever in your debt. I am so proud to be here with you today. We face many challenges and many opportunities, and we will face all of them together as a team. And if we do, I am certain that the future for America has never, ever looked brighter. Because of patriots like you, freedom will prevail. As your commander-in-chief, I thank you, I salute you, God bless you, God bless the armed forces, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
And that was Donald Trump. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there and reminding you that you are not neutral and that the government has no rights.